And you'll see him to the right in that picture. He has one of the microscopes with the many different moving parts, which we will talk about as we go through this today. There he is with his lovely wife, and a picture of him, a younger him, working at his desk. In 1920, Rife had finished building the world's first virus microscope. And that's important because usually if you saw something under a microscope, it would basically kill whatever organisms were visible through the microscope. He was able to look at viruses in a live state, and he would actually zap them individually to rid people of illnesses and diseases. And again, we'll talk more about that as we go through. This is one of the papers at the time, and it talks about some of his wonderful experiments that he had done. This man was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And I'm just going to go back there again because he bears the wonders of germ life. And again, that goes back to the microscope that he developed. Brilliant man. This is one of those microscopes. This microscope has 6,000 different parts. He did this in 1933. He had perfected that technology. And the universal microscope, which had the 6,000 different parts, was capable of magnifying objects up to 60,000 times their normal size. With this incredible microscope, Rife became the first human being to actually see viruses live. And until quite recently, the universal microscope was the only one which was able to view live viruses. Modern electron microscopes instantly kill everything beneath them, viewing only the mummified remains and debris. So he was a great innovator, and I'm just going to let you take a look at that. Can you imagine putting that together? Here's him with some other of his innovations that he created, and I'm going to give you a little bit more of his history. But before we do that, there was a handbook of Rife frequency healing because he believed that you can use frequencies to kill viruses. They actually radiate hamburger before you buy it in the store, which kills any viruses that are in that meat. So we use that technology. He learned how to do that and find the frequencies to do that and treat people. And he created something called the Rife machine, which we will talk about. So this talks about how he slowly could rotate block quartz prisms to focus light on a single wavelength upon the microorganism he was examining. The wavelength was selected because it resonated with the spectroscopic signature frequency of the microbe based on the now established fact that every molecule oscillates at its own distinct frequency. Whew, that's a mouthful, isn't it? Again, this man was brilliant, and I'm only going to give you just the top cream off of everything here. I would encourage you to really look into him. Now, you're going to see people that are going to say, oh, this was a hoax, and we're going to talk about that shortly. It was not a hoax. A man named Barry Lines, he actually wrote this book about the cancer cure that worked. 50 years of suppression. And as you can see, it's going to be about the Rife report. This was, of course, 50 years after what we're going to be talking about, because he did find a cure for cancer. This is a paramecium caudatum, and it's exposed to 1,550 hertz. The excited plasma tube. What's going to happen is it's undergoing evisceration, membrane transport disruption, and disintegration from the plasma wave. If you take a look at this, this is one of those viruses that he was able to see through his microscope. And if you'll notice, sort of like in its underbelly, you'll notice that it looks a little strange there. That's because that is actually destroying that paramecium. So we have to recognize that this is something that was outstanding, especially at that time. So, dread disease germs destroyed by rays, claims of SD scientists. So, cancer blow seen after 18-year toil by Rife. He was actually touted for finding a way to stop cancer. Milbank Johnson, who was a doctor, medical director of the Pacific Mutual Life Insurance Company. He was the president of the Southern California Auto Club. He gave a dinner to honor the accomplishments and achievements of Dr. Royal Raymond Rife in his home at Pasadena called Bell Bank. The cabinet to the right supported the solid gold dishes of Napoleon. This is how wealthy this guy was. Johnson was reportedly worth $15 million, and at that time, back in the late teens, early 20s, that's a lot of cash. Science latest strides in the war on ills disclosed. Doctors attending from all over the United States were there. And this was dated November the 20th, 1931. This is where you can find some additional information about Rife. There's a lot of information, but these are just two places where you can check out to find out more about Rife. But let me tell you something about Rife. So if you can come back to me and just see me live. What a thrill. One of the things about Royal Raymond Rife was he was a brilliant man. He did go to universities and had many different accomplishments from attending these universities. However, he also was a genius and an inventor, and he could see beyond what everyone could see at that time. And there is actually, they took 18 people who had cancer, and he actually got to treat them by using this technology. And in a short period of time, those people were cured of cancer. 16 of them were cured of cancer, and the other 2, it took a little bit longer with some more treatments. But they were actually cured of cancer. I don't remember the exact cancer because I left my notes at home. Shame, 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 shame. But I left my notes at home, so if you'd like more information, you can get a hold of me, and I'd be glad to share that with you. You could also Facebook me, but don't depend upon me to answer you right away because it's not part of my generation. You want to get a hold of me, you text me, you email me, you call me. However, he was touted for this, and that was part of the celebration that they had in 1931 for him at that dinner. That posed a great threat to the medical community, to the drug community. I'm talking about laboratories that create drugs, and to insurance companies. Because unfortunately, in this country, we don't cure things. Now, can't talk about other countries. We mostly don't cure things. We treat things. Because there's a great deal more money in treating people than there is in curing people. Now, I disagree with that. I believe in abundance. So if you do cure people, there's always going to be sick people that need to be cured. However, that's not how many of the monopolies work. So after all of what he has been through, and then going through with the experiment, and the proof about cancer being treated this way and cured, caused a threat. And the next thing you know, he is blacklisted. He's blacklisted, and the people that were at that dinner that you saw in the picture, they either left the country to practice somewhere else, or they were promoted either in the hospitals that they worked in, or they were promoted on different medical boards, but they would get an influence, so to speak, a greater position where they could wield influence. And his laboratory was broken into. Most of his things, his records were stolen or destroyed. His microscope was also extremely damaged, his microscopes. So he created a great deal of, or he promoted, he didn't create it, fear and threat to the status quo. And it took him the rest of his life to attempt to rebuild what he had learned, what he had proven, what he had displayed to the world. And then you're going to say, oh, this sounds like one of those, theories, conspiracy theories. No, I don't think so. This man was devastated, and as I said, his laboratory, which was a whole, it was rooms and rooms, it was a house, basically. Everything was destroyed or stolen. And his spirit was crushed after that because he was blacklisted. And this caused a great deal of stress on him, and he started to drink. And I don't remember when his wife passed away. Again, that's on my cheat sheet, which I left at home. But her passing created even more trauma for him and put him even into a darker place. And he began to drink more. And of course, alcoholism we've talked about on this program many times, but he was a broken person. And when his wife died, that was a great additional crush because she was his support. They didn't have any children, so the prodigy, that was the end of the line for his family. And he continued on until he was, I believe, 71 when he passed away. And I believe, I don't want to speak out of term here, but he was a broken man. He was a broken man. And it's sad because he was also, what's the word I'm looking for? He was wiped away with regard to his studies and what his accomplishments were. And it was only years later when the man wrote that book that it started to come forward again and people started to learn about Dr. Rife and the brilliant things that he did. And he did create a machine called the Rife machine. Now, I hesitate to talk about it because people will say, well, that's a rip-off and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, there are people that will rip off anything. We know this. So you have actual Rife machines that do what they're supposed to do. And then you have ones that aren't. And you have to be very cautious. And the Rife machine was also banned from being sold in this country for decades. The only way you could get it was to purchase it from Europe. And you really weren't allowed to share with anyone that you had it. It's a little more in the open now than it was back then, but there's still a stigma that's attached to it because of the naysayers, because of fear. We talk about the Course in Miracles on this program many times, and in the Course in Miracles, it talks about either you live in love or you live in fear. Those are the two emotions, those are the two basic emotions. And love is not just, oh, I love you, pat, pat, pat. It's about acceptance, it's about caring, it's about anything positive. Love is growth. Fear is not. And again, right now there's so much fear, not only in this country, but around the world. And you'll see how people are treating one another, and that comes out of fear. So we either have love or fear, and that's what he got swept up in, like so many brilliant people do. So you can learn more about that, and you can learn more about the Rife machine if you choose to or not. That's up to you. However, be cautious with what you read, and you can always contact me if you'd like to have additional information on this too. And I believe